Good afternoon. Welcome back to Apocalypse and Genesis. Today, I thought we could consider for just a moment that we might be living through the last second of the precession. You might not, and that's certainly the more prudent and convenient outlook, but I really do. And not merely because the headlines read like a clown act where nothing can go right. I mean, if Darwin was correct and this is where we've landed on our rise to perfection, well, our grandkids are in trouble. Try to look at the rise of anatomically modern man over Neanderthal as a single day process that took us 4 RAM or 5 AHAW or 7 SAR, the last 26,000 years. And our magnificent victory over our slower cousins is ironic because they were here for like 10 times as long and managed to survive without the benefit of nuclear weapons or computers. And it seems like our greatest achievement have been to upload the AI that wipes us out. So I was just wondering, if we realized what time it is on the cosmic clock, do you suppose we might resolve to get our act together after the next apocalypse that's due to begin like next week? Revelation 6:2. I think the clock idea might be a reason Zoroaster called the precession a cycle of 24,000 years, with two fatal periods of 12,000 years ending badly. The Romans and Greek Stoics said one half precession ends with flood and the other ends with fire. Personally, I see both happening and both in short order. What was going through my head when I wrote this was a song by Nickelback on the Dark Horse album. It's called If Today Was Your Last Day. I got to thinking about my Legion faults now and for the past 68 plus years. And while I found it repentfully depressing, it also gave me more clarity and resolution than the usual putting stuff off until tomorrow. Because at this point, the hold box is your trash bucket. Resolve now to think, to say, and to do the right thing, or just forget about it. Revelation 22:11. Here is life at the end of Neanderthal, clan of the cave bear. Their idea of God. The skull altar was found at Chauvet Cave near Pont d'Arc in France, along with about 200 such skulls. The art on the walls suggests they, like their compatriots at Lascaux, had seen Pegasus flying right side up, whereas you and I haven't for about 12,000 years, unless we lived in Australia, South Africa, or Argentina. The opposition to their god came from a beast, one they depicted as a woolly rhino who slays mankind, and the bull of heaven, probably Taurus and Mars. I suspect it's the Orion end of the Orion Seth super constellation that also includes Taurus and Lepus. That stone carving of the Gravetians was again remembered by the Babylonians, who called it the Mushushu dragon, referring to a beam rising from Sirius, causing pole shift. The folks of Göbekli Tepe, who carved the boar as their god of the north, were recalling this time to which we have returned, when Polaris was axle of the universe. The rhino never had a pointy head, so I'm thinking that the triangle atop a triangle there is a first of Aries when their sky fell. As you may have discerned on the last slide, our problem with understanding creation is kind of like our problem understanding scripture. There is just a massive mixing of metaphors because everybody had their own story of what they had seen when the world turned upside down and life subsequently had to reemerge. Like everything I've told you, this is just my interpretation, and I'm okay with being famously wrong until I'm tragically right. But it seems the blue eye of Horus precedes the red one, if you live in the northern hemisphere. And it's a matter of days until the world again turns over. The dark stars won't be visible for long, and then they go back into hiding for 3.5 years, which will be absolute havoc on Earth because now it's accompanied by the dust, and space rocks. They are your two fire-breathing prophets, represented by your other pairs of prophets through history, like Moses and Aaron, or Jesus and John the Baptist. The Kuduro stone at the top suggests there will be a three-house event of the zodiac with the moon between Saturn and Venus. If the blue one is the serpent in front of the sun god's crown on the horse of Edfu, then what then that's what we supposedly see. Only folks will call it other things like a comet or a planet. Today, I think it's in Gemini. Watch for it when it shows up in Taurus. The stone on the bottom right is Native American. It says the Eye of Ra that brought the flood, the one that made him cry in Leo, is his left, the first one the planets come to. And on top of his head, you can see the raven or heron who flies between us and the sun was showing up at the first of Aries when it aligned with the first of Virgo, a triangle and a diamond. For the record, I believe that is where the letter A came from. When the ancients noticed this place has a beginning, a place where the tree of life starts and ends periodically, a time when El told us, "You're going to die." And Enki said, "No, death is just the first page of another chapter," or something like that. Look it up. It's in Genesis 2. But there was some sort of disagreement between the leaders of heaven and earth, two that are supposed to be working together. While one star goes behind the sun, another comes out to play, being born near the ecliptic, and it all goes pretty quickly. Remember the said festival of the Egyptians where the pharaoh had to run laps every 3 years after his 30th year in power? I think that's what the story of Orion and Seth was all about. The relationship between Saturn and his son Jupiter, Orion's relationship with his partner Oset. When the dragon and phoenix line up at Pegasus, our world is about to flip over and maybe stay that way. I think I've said this before. I started looking at the apocalypse like Baruch, 2 weeks of years out. What startled me was the word, the first Yod and Hey and Yahweh in 2010 at the sign of the Phoenix in Aquarius. The Yod was Jupiter and the one slipping behind him. The Hey was Aquarius, where it supposedly arrived again this year. And yet I've spent almost 13 years waiting for the Vav. What I think that means is that we're about to meet the Lamb of God. And I honestly think the next huge sign is going to be Jupiter and Venus at the first of Aries, followed there shortly by the Sun. On my last video, I definitely made at least one small error. If we do make it to the vernal equinox, the Sun will have gone a little past Hipparchus 135 and a hair over the first of Aries. And it could happen a full day earlier than I thought. One should not assume vernal equinox always comes the 21st of March. Next year it comes a day early. I believe this will be the day of the fourth ram, which is also the first one of the new cycle, if that makes sense. I'm pretty sure it's why the Canaanite or Hebrew altar had 4 horns, and why one of my Native American pipes is shaped the same way. We've seen big Ohuelan stars and Etruscan libation bowls telling us the same tale. Fire comes 4 times to the precession when God intones, "Let there be light." I believe 2 of the Nibiru system objects are on the way to Jupiter for the big rendezvous, one taking the usual ecliptic path to get there, the other headed in the opposite direction by a more central route. The second was seen November 16th near Regulus on the moon. On the Native American stone, you can see where they removed a quarter piece on one end to signify a day we could lose 3 months to a quick pole shift. A day Orion rises above Pisces and Saturn goes walkabout, a day of the eye. Can you see the little heron there in front, making the most ancient form of the letter A. I believe the Phoenicians were trying to tell us with their alphabet, this is the beginning. You might recall that for some of the ancients, the number one, which is like also the Mayan letter A of the scythe, came from the same idea that the eagle or beast or morning star comes to the pivot of the universe and then begins the apocalypse show with a sun flare and a pole shift. Perhaps it provides the electrical connection. There's a page of Israelite history that's hard to find. Supposedly, Hebrews, Samaritans, and Christians, like the early Egyptians, originally worshipped Seth, Oset, as part of the Godhead, and nobody recognizes the fact now because they can't remember why. I think the story is very much related to the end times. Seth, third son of Adam, in one people's story was a goddess dragon, and in others was a symbol for a reversal in the sky of Orion Osiris. The recent red-haired Seth with the donkey ears or rabbit ears was eventually rejected by folks, was that he had been seen as the preferred symbol of the hated slave masters. Now, did you ever see the movie 10,000 BC? Because there was a great portrayal of one of the Anunnaki conehead masters. The tablet above is in a back room of the National Museum of Damascus. Right next to that image was a reversed Orion wearing a halo. What no one will tell you is that the Hyksos slavers were what later became the Israelites. And when they founded Jerusalem, they were remembering Zeus Solimus, a son of Aries from ancient Anatolia, a version of Era, Ishum, Dumuzi, Nergal, Tammuz, all variations on the Nibiru nemesis theme. The fact that there was an earth sign of the circled cross adjacent to the Orion on the next tile indicates we're talking about this time of apocalypse. Such an object found in a Roman religious setting only makes sense if Christianity were an apocalyptic religion. And by the way, I think all religions are. They're a reaction to Earth's periodic cataclysms. Saturn leaving behind his sun to take over when Orion has switched sides of the zodiac is partly what the Exodus story was about. It's also probably behind the story of a Moshiach who comes back to deliver us to heaven, a different take on deliverance. In other words, you can tell the story as a great war and a future world order of victory for one people and slavery to everyone else. But isn't that exactly what we already have going on? A glorious legacy of parasitism? Read Genesis 47 and look to see who owns the central banks. Nothing's changed since forever. Democracy is the sugarcoating of oligarchy and the precursor to the tyranny. Read Polybius or stand by and watch what they do with AI and the surveillance state. You can all be spoon-fed information and controlled like Pinocchio on a string. The Wadjet was another way of looking at this time when the eagle and the dragon show up on different sides of Aquarius, resulting in an eclipse when they line up with us. Here's the Bennu bird, a symbol of Thoth, the god of wisdom who tried to warn us of what's coming. Some people made him out to be a moon god. Perhaps. I would also nominate him for the god of the north position, shaped with the head of a heron flying down from Polaris to Pegasus. If so, that might make him the designated candidate for Isaiah 14. If Lucifer is to dive bomb between Jupiter and Saturn, that would bring to mind a line from the Nicene Creed. And we believe in the Holy Ghost, the Lord and giver of life, who proceedeth from the Father. As far as I know, the blue star arrived as a 14-year orbital of a 7-year red star. Perhaps the Vatican can make the announcement from their Lucifer telescope at Mount Graham, Arizona. The big image here represents the various faces of what I call the creation ring. Look closely and you will see the rabbit god and the phoenix. And the rabbit god has the teeth of a dragon and the horns of a goat. Rendezvous at first of Aries? Honestly, different cultures have them opposite each other in terms of who gets to play the trickster and who gets to play the strict deity of righteousness. But you know what? Some species might be able to live without a spirit or an earthly body, but I never met one. To me, it takes two. So let me tell you an old story, and you can forever think I'm nuts. Once there was a rebel, and he had a vision in which the spirit god spoke to him. He was told, escape the empire and lead your peoples to salvation. Seek a living world and let your people worship her as they do me, and she will provide for them. We would respect her and rejoice in her sanctuary, and that was 64,000 years ago. The refugees of 27 planets and 7 races came here and locked the gates, lest the empire come and enslave us all again, or simply rape and murder and steal. But the people who saved us then are the ones who rule us now. Their holy book promises them eternal dominion. At CERN, they've been cracking open the gates to come what may. And we don't know what happened to the empire nor to the rebellion, only that our saviors became our captors. Now, knowing what you do about what passes for leadership in this place, what are the odds humanity wasn't sold out? Think Great Reset. I believe the idea of Nibiru rising above the blue star, call it what you will, is exactly the time or exactly the same as Hercules smashing the Hydra with space rocks, flaming arrows, with Athena, Virgo. You can see the whole thing, the time of the gods is one big battle of angels. And if you do, well, then all the heroic contests forevermore will have a vision of St. George slaying the dragon, like Constantine the Great painting on his portico. A testimony to patriarchy forever. Sorry about that, Mom. Notice the falcon decerebrating the old sun. That's what they did with the heads of old pharaohs. They dug out the brains. Honest, Horace is not just there picking the nose of Grandpa. Also notice the next pirouette along the Aquarius-Leo axis will deliver quite the Arctic Express to North America. For DP's sake, I hope I'm wrong. Here is Eve in the time of exploding plasmas from the stars of creation. John the Baptist called her life. Bible calls her Kol He, 3 names of the goddess, mother, all, and life. On the left, you have when and where she arrives. First of Aries, vernal equinox, and a reversal in which Leo rises and the age of Pisces falls. Sort of like Virgo rising on the first Hebrew writing at Wadi el-Hol. In the Aleph, the heart of heaven falls all the way down the axis to get there, like a magnetic polarization of the planet. Suddenly everything points elsewhere. I don't know if you've noticed, but many of the holy words, and even the most common, contain ideas of the creation if you care to look. For example, one of the first words in your Egyptian dictionary should be donkey. Ah, also spelled like a vulture or eagle or raven. Notice the Hebrew translation. Resh, your idea of the spirit, comes to the Vav event at the same time the dragon Cheth is with Orion when it changes sides. This is in Peru. I believe the Nazca lines were bequeathed to us by the Paracas Coneheads. There is Heart of Heaven traversing the zodiac from Aquila. Since that trajectory has famous names that light up along the way, like Peacock Angel and Phoenix, I expect the sky to light up sometime between Christmas, our first event near Aquila, and that vernal equinox that transports us elsewhere. By the way, the darkness owned America for our last apocalypse. Grandma Spider, Scorpio, had to go steal fire and light from across the sea before life was restored here. The little stone is from Ojuelos de Jalisco, and that might be our first view before Red Star goes to the top of the world and our glorious age of Aquarius hasn't lasted very long unless we do a flip. These are what is known as Ica stones, apparently the ones the Inquisition didn't get to. Most of the time you find them shattered from having been dumped in fire. On these ones, you can see that the telescope was not invented in the 17th century. Study the stones and you'll find out that brain and heart surgery weren't new either. Anyway, here you have ancient astronomers looking at the first Aquarius, first Virgo pillar for signs of a dark star coming. They were also very concerned with Sirius in Canis Major going off in this time. If you look at the zodiac, you can see that the telescope was as centered on that dark star headed toward Pavo and Phoenix as it was in the other direction, looking at Sagittarius A. The galactic center seemed to blow its accretion disk on occasion, sending energy and mass in this direction. This is called the foliated cross of the Maya. I imagine little guy is Grandpa Saturn, and the big guy is his son Jupiter. Note the huge dragon at the bottom of the world and the bull of heaven just below the phoenix. I'm thinking that all means the universe is still right side up from our perspective when it starts. In other words, just prior to the flare and the pole shift. The big stone on the left is Nyonyosi from Burkina Faso. It shows Seth Lamat, the rabbit god, talking to his wife, playing Orion, as she would for the Egyptians on that little stone plaque below. The pipe on the right is my poor attempt at leaving behind a bit of cosmic knowledge. The pipe itself, in the shape of a raven-git serpent at the first of Aries, is ancient, found in Ohio. The buffalo teeth necklace was supposedly crow, with a count for 20 years between the end of the Ahau and the next great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn that brings the great solar minimum. 20 years is a good basic count for the universe. In 30 of them, the cosmic world returns, the Neros year of Josephus. Bear claws for the 5 Ahau, coyote claws for the 7 hands, or what Sumer called the Sar. Big glass beads are for the 4 rams, what Hindus call the Yuga. History starts over with the cataclysm we're waiting for. Some call it a solar micronova or Carrington event. Some call it a galactic wave. But there are other names for plasma events. We shall see. I really got a kick out of this. The scientists have nearly caught up with the Ojuelans and Etruscans. They too are expecting a huge solar event. They say it takes 6,000 years, give or take 1,400 years. And how is that superior to my pagan ancestors? In a precession of almost 26,000 years, and maybe that's close if the ancients can't nail it down to a year. Right about now, my ancestors would have been telling me to get off the coast and return to the Rockies. We were the mountain goat tribe, allied to the coyote, the wolf, the rabbit, the eagle, and the bear. For boasting ourselves a branch of the mother tribe, the invading British patriarchs collected our heads. I was a bit amazed by that basketball in the sky the other day. I asked a lady in the parking lot if she'd ever seen a round cloud before. She said, "Not like that one." There will be many more amazing sights in the heavens in the coming days. Syrian stone carvings and Sumerian clay tablets show gatherings of the Apkallu demons and Nergal's Sabiti, an arrival of the 7 sages to go with the planets we already have. The ancients looked at it all as a council of the gods, the ones who choose our destiny. They were organs and limbs of the Great One himself. John the Baptist said the 7 wrote the Torah and put it in the hands of the Son, Adonai. This is Van Gogh's Starry Night. I view it as prophecy. On one level, you can see it as his view from the asylum at Saint Remy de Provence. Okay, sure. On another level, it's the phoenix rising over the eagle, over the whale. On another, it's the coming flood. I have relatives at Auvers, where he is buried. France will be overwhelmed. Can you see the water rolling in over the hills? On another, it's our planets appearing at the same time as Nibiru's planets and moons. And can you see the dark star or comet or blue flash on the third wave? If the painter was troubled, he had a right to be. He clearly saw too much. He told his brother, "It's just what I saw before the dawn." Well, again, I'll paste some clips from friends with old rocks. These ones are way older and more luminous than others we've seen. Again, there's not much we can do other than not be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Stock up on a bit of food and water for when the modern economic system and your government let you down. It happens, you know. Shema bless you and keep you, now and forever. Take care.
¿Qué tal, amigos? Pues aquí miren, mostrándole esta espectacular pieza. Igual es de vidrio volcánico. Tiene las mismas características que las otras piezas. Si pueden ver, el tallado no es sandblast. No está sobre la superficie. Tiene una especie de profundidad, lo cual hace que se vea como en 3 dimensiones. Aquí vemos otra vez los mismos dos personajes, que es uno de nuestros antepasados y un extraterrestre. En este caso volvemos al tema de un rey o un líder que lo traen aquí cargando, que traen el legado de esta persona. Ellos lo están cargando, ese legado, y estos seres son los guardianes. Este que ven aquí es como una especie de pescadito. Hasta le ponen aquí una 100 que trae su huesito natural. Vemos el misma especie de una incrustación de obsidiana con su pegamento orgánico. Aquí también. Y vemos toda la erosión que tiene la pieza. Esta pieza pues es más grande que esta otra de acá. Y vamos a verla aquí cómo se ve con la luz. Y se ve pues muy padre, se alumbra. Muy padre que se alumbra. En la parte de atrás también tenemos una simbología que si alguno de ustedes sabe qué significa, pues estaría muy padre descubrirlo. Miren. Y trae como puros puntitos que le hicieron para que se viera de esta forma. Por dentro podemos ver claramente que el material pues es sólido. Y pues bueno, espero que les haya gustado también. Saludos. ¿Qué tal, amigos? Aquí mostrando más información de algunas piezas interesantes. Se las voy mostrando. Son en este caso 1, 2, 3 cráneos, un hacha de hueso. Aquí vemos que es claramente hueso. No sabemos de qué tipo de animal sería este hueso, pero es un hueso bastante grueso. Miren nada más. Es muy grande. Y tenemos también a este ser, que es la representación como de la calavera de un ser. Y esta pieza, lo interesante es que es una pieza es de una sola pieza. Y tuvo que haberse quitado todo este material, quitado todo el ahuecado que tiene en esta parte de aquí, el ahuecado que tiene en medio de las piernas y el ahuecado que tiene pues en toda esta parte de aquí. Significa que la pieza era muy grande, la pieza, para poderla tallar. Entonces, para lograr este trabajo se requirió pues bastante trabajo, bastante tiempo, bastante esfuerzo. Podemos ver claramente erosión, todos estos puntos de erosión. Y miren, lo interesante es que la columna vertebral parece como si fuera metálica, o una placa, como si tuviera una placa metálica con agujeros. Entonces muy probablemente ellos o así la tenían o se hicieron alguna modificación por la gravedad. Miren aquí evidente toda la erosión que tiene. Y bueno, esta pieza está muy padre, está muy bonita. Les muestro las siguientes en los demás videos. Mira, aquí está este cráneo. Chécate las facciones, el pegamento que tienen los ojos de obsidiana. Tiene como un cuernito, una crestita. Y acá tiene un ser que es como si fuera su rey, con el símbolo de él, ¿verdad? Igual es de obsidiana este círculo y tiene pegado pegamento orgánico que se puede datar. Y es como una especie, aquí vemos toda la erosión que tiene, todos estos puntitos. Mira, ahí podemos ver claramente la erosión que tiene el material. Es una especie de vidrio volcánico. Aquí podemos ver cómo se ve ante la luz. No es que está pesadito, pero está muy padre.